The torches are burning down to their wooden handles, throwing long, erratic shadows against the plastered walls of a courtyard in Cana, for failing to provide the expected volume of celebration for his guests. Most people assume this story, the very first public act of Jesus. The heavy, sweet aroma of fermented grapes fills the shadows. The liquid splashing against the sides of the serving pitcher is no longer clear. It is a deep, rich crimson. It catches the torchlight, moving heavy and thick like blood. Jesus does not touch the jars. He does not say a prayer aloud. He does not wave a hand. The water simply recognizes its maker. And it changes. The water that was meant to wash the outside of a man has become the wine designed to gladden the inside of a man. The system of exhaustion has become a fountain of joy. The 6 jars of striving have been completely swallowed by a vintage that no human hands could ever crush and ferment or produce. But the master of the banquet does not know where this came from. He takes a sip. His eyes widen in the lamplight. And what he says next reveals exactly what kind of wine this really is. The master of the banquet lowers the clay cup. He wipes the dark red stain from his mouth. He calls the terrified groom over to his table. He is entirely confused. The standard playbook for an ancient Mediterranean wedding is simple. You serve the expensive, heavy vintage on day 1. You let the guests drink deeply. You wait for the alcohol to dull their senses. Then is simply a rescue mission for a humiliated family. They read it as a miracle of convenience, a moment where God steps in to save a party. On day 4 or 5, you bring out the cheap, watered-down surplus. No one notices. Everyone is happy. Everyone brings out the choice wine first. He says, "But you have saved the best till now." The master thinks he is praising a clever catering trick. He has no idea he is announcing the end of an era. To the Jewish mind, steeped in the Hebrew scriptures, a sudden, massive overabundance of flawless wine is not just good fortune, it is a signal fire. It is a specific, highly anticipated theological marker. Read the ancient prophets. Read Amos. Read Isaiah. Read Jeremiah. They all point to a specific future. A day when the world is finally set right. A day when the long exile ends. Amos promises the mountains will drip with sweet wine. Isaiah promises a cosmic feast of rich food and well-aged wines. Jeremiah promises the vats will overflow and the people will rejoice. Joel says the vats will literally burst with new wine. In the biblical imagination, an ocean of wine is not a party. It is the signature of the Messiah. Look at the contrast John is building. The old system is represented by the empty clay pitchers. The old religion has literally run dry. The wine of the old covenant is exhausted. But John, the writer of this text, does not give us random acts of kindness. He gives us signs. The real question of this moment isn't, it has nothing left to give the people. The party is over. Then look at the stone jars. The old way was water. The new way is wine. The old system was heavy. The new system is intoxicating. The old law washed the outside of the skin. The new grace transforms the blood. Jesus has just produced 120 gallons of the finest vintage the world has ever tasted. Think about the sheer volume. That is roughly 1,000 modern bottles of wine. It is wildly excessive. It is completely unnecessary for a party that is already winding down. But Jesus is not stocking a wedding. He is inaugurating a kingdom. He is declaring that the days of scraping the bottom of the religious barrel are over. The days of hauling water to wash a guilty conscience are finished. The messianic banquet has actually begun, not in the marble halls of the temple in Jerusalem, but in a backwater village in Galilee, surrounded by dirt and stone. The best has been saved for last. But there is a shadow hanging over this celebration, a dark, heavy reality hiding in the conversation Jesus had with his mother just moments before the water turned red. A single word that changes the ultimate cost of this miracle. Mary stands in the chaotic noise of the courtyard, surrounded by the smell of roasted meat and the frantic whispers of the servants. How did he do it? It is this. Why did he use the water? If you look closely at the edges of the room, and she looks at her firstborn son. They have no wine. Jesus looks back at her, and his response sounds inexplicably distant to our modern ears. Woman, why do you involve me? My hour has not yet come. To understand the shadow falling over this wedding, you have to look at the exact word Jesus uses in John chapter 2. Verse 4. The word translated as hour is the Greek noun hora. In ordinary Greek vocabulary, hora simply means a time of day, a passing season, or a measurement of sunlight. But in the theological architecture of John's Gospel, it is never just a unit of time. It is a ticking clock. It is the specific, preordained moment of a violent and cosmic destiny. You can trace this exact word like a dark, heavy thread through the rest of the book. In chapter 7, the temple guards step forward to arrest him in the crowds, but they cannot lay a hand on him because his hora had not yet arrived. In chapter 12, the tension finally breaks, and Jesus announces to his disciples, "The hora has come for the Son of Man to be glorified." And just before he crosses the Kidron Valley, into the garden, with the torches of the soldiers already burning in the distance, he looks up to the dark sky and prays, "Father, the hora has come." Past the panic of the servants and the empty wineskins, you will see a detail hiding in the periphery. 6 massive objects sitting quietly in the shadows. It is the schedule for an execution. When Mary asks him to intervene, she is asking him to step out of the shadows. She is asking him to reveal who he is. And Jesus knows that the moment he publicly reveals his glory, the moment he produces the prophetic vintage of the Messiah, he permanently starts the countdown to the cross. The wine splashing into the clay cups in Cana is a dark, rich crimson. It catches the firelight. It looks exactly like what will run down the wood of a Roman cross 3 years later. The shadow of Calvary is already falling across the packed dirt floor of a celebration. He knows that to give them this wine, he has to begin the journey toward his own death. Providing the joy of the new kingdom requires something far more expensive than water. It requires the host to pour out himself. But the detail that changes how you view this entire miracle is what happens to those stone jars after the party ends. The torches burn out. The guests stumble home. The courtyard falls completely silent. Look at the 6 stone jars left in the shadows. They are deeply, permanently stained. They are marked by the heavy, sticky residue of fermented grapes. The cold limestone now smells like a vineyard. They can never be used for ritual washing again. You cannot wash your hands in wine. You cannot perform katharismos with the vintage of the Messiah. This is not a story about hospitality. It is a story about replacement. To feel the sheer weight of what happens in this back room, Jesus did not just step in to solve a catering crisis. He hijacked the religious machinery of an entire household and rendered it permanently obsolete. The vessels of striving are now full of grace. The water of the old covenant is gone. The heavy, crushing demand for human perfection has been swallowed whole by an intoxicating, entirely unearned joy. But notice exactly who witnesses this transition. The master of the banquet tastes the wine, but he does not know the source. The important guests at the head tables are completely blind to the fact that their system has just been dismantled in a back room. Only the servants know. Only the people carrying the heavy leather buckets. Only the people with dirt on their heels. Only the ones whose arms are shaking from the exhausting weight of hauling the water. This is not an accident. It is a pattern. Revelation does not happen at the head table. It happens in the shadows. The true vintage is not poured for the people who think they are already clean. It is poured for the people who know they are completely out of options. The water was not wasted. It was transformed. The jars were not shattered. They were fulfilled. But this realization shifts the entire weight of the story. You cannot just look at the miracle itself. You have to look at the dirt on the feet of the guests. You have to understand, away from a first-century village in Galilee, and drops it directly onto the heavy, invisible things you are carrying today. The guests drank from the ordinary clay pitchers and tasted a celebration that was already dying. The master of the banquet raised his cup in the torchlight and praised a groom who had done absolutely nothing to earn it. The servants hauled heavy water from a dark well and watched an exhausting religion turn into blood-red joy. A mother asked for a temporary rescue and started the ticking clock of a cosmic execution. 6 stone monuments stood empty in the shadows and were filled to the absolute brim with a grace they were never meant to hold. A village wedding ran completely dry, and the eternal banquet of the Messiah officially began. Same jars, same water, an entirely new kingdom. But maybe the part that stays with me most is the stains on the limestone. 6 massive objects designed to measure human guilt, permanently ruined for their original purpose. Because once the grace of God touches the heavy, exhausting machinery of your striving, that machinery is broken forever. If you are in a season where you are terrified of running dry, the invisible, suffocating system of rules that every single person in that village carried on their shoulders from the moment they woke up. If you are hauling heavy buckets, trying to keep yourself acceptable, trying to carry the crushing weight of a system that demands you, be perfect before you can sit at the feast. Stop hauling the water. This is not a demand for more effort. It is an invitation to sit down. The katharismos is finished. You do not need to wash your hands before you approach this host. You just need to hold out your empty cup. And may the God who steps into the quiet back rooms of our failure fill your empty vessels to the absolute brim and give you a vintage you could never have produced on your own. If this reached something in you, subscribe. Leave a comment. Even one word helps. Share this with someone who is exhausted from trying to keep themselves clean. Pray for us as we keep digging into these texts to the moment they went to sleep. Jesus is not offering a bumper sticker solution to a temporary problem. He is diagnosing an exhaustion that an entire nation did not even realize they had. Mary, his mother, sees the empty pitchers. She walks over to her son. You can hear the singing bleeding through the heavy wooden doors, the rhythmic thump of leather sandals on a packed dirt floor, and delivers the crisis in a simple, desperate sentence. They have no wine. He tells her his hour has not yet come, but then he turns his eyes toward the corner of the courtyard. He does not summon new wineskins. He does not multiply the existing pitchers. He points towards something that has absolutely nothing to do with drinking, nothing to do with celebrating, and everything to do with the heavy, crushing burden of being clean. Palestine in the 1st century is a world governed by dust. It coats the hems of linen robes. It settles deep into the cracks of calloused heels. It covers the narrow, crowded streets where livestock walk, where vendors sell their goods, where the dead are carried to their tombs. But for the Jewish mind in the ancient world, this dust is not just a physical nuisance. It is a spiritual contagion. To understand what Jesus is looking at in that crowded courtyard, you have to understand the exhausting, relentless architecture of ritual purity. By the 1st century, the religious elite had dramatically expanded the biblical laws of purification. What was originally designed for priests serving in the temple in Jerusalem had been strictly mapped onto the dining room tables of every ordinary Jewish home. If you walked through a busy marketplace, you contracted impurity, the laughter of guests who have been celebrating for nearly a week, but in the back room, entirely out of sight of the master of the banquet. If your shoulder accidentally brushed against a Gentile merchant, you were defiled. This washing was not about hygiene. It was about access. The water was not soap. It was a barrier between human contamination and a holy God. To eat a celebration meal required a meticulous, anxious ritual. You would take a specific vessel. You would pour the water over the right hand, from the fingertips down to the wrist, watching the heavy droplets fall to the dirt to ensure the contaminated water did not run back down your arm. Then, you would repeat the exact motion on the left. You would do this before the meal began. You would do it between courses. You would do it constantly. Now scale that anxiety across an entire lifetime. Scale it across a 7-day wedding festival, with hundreds of guests arriving from the sun-baked roads of Galilee. The sheer volume of water required just to maintain a baseline of spiritual acceptability is staggering, and that brings us to the vessels sitting in the shadows. John does not just tell us they were water jars. He tells us exactly what they were made of. In the archaeology of the 1st century, the material of a container is never an accident. Clay pots are cheap. Clay pots are light. But if a dead insect falls into a clay pot, or if a ritually impure person touches its rim, the air is thick with a quiet, desperate panic. A servant tips a clay pitcher over a serving cup. The entire vessel is permanently defiled. The law demands it must be taken outside and shattered into pieces. But stone is different. According to the rabbinic traditions of the time, stone cannot contract ritual impurity. It is immune to the contagion of the world. So, a careful family, a family terrified of losing their standing before God and the community, invests heavily in stone. These are monumental, heavy, immovable objects carved straight out of the limestone hills of Judea. They represent the massive, immovable weight of the law itself. But the material is only half the picture. John records a specific number, 6 of them, and the moment you calculate how much water these specific jars actually hold, the scale of this quiet backroom moment completely changes. John tells us exactly how much they hold, 20 to 30 gallons apiece. Do the math. That is a minimum of 120 gallons. That is roughly 1,000 pounds of liquid sitting against the courtyard wall. That is an industrial scale of purification for a people terrified of being unclean. And there are exactly 6 of them, not 7. In the biblical imagination, 7 is the number of completion. 7 is Sabbath. 7 is the exhale of creation. 7 is the moment God looks at the work of his hands, sits down, and says it is finished. But there are only 6, and nothing comes out but the dry, hollow scrape of dust. The wine is completely gone. 6 is the number of human effort. 6 is the number of the work week. 6 is a system that washes and scrubs and repeats, but never actually achieves rest. Jesus looks at the terrified servants. The music is still playing in the other room. The master of the banquet is likely shouting for the next round. The groom is minutes away from social ruin. Jesus does not point to the empty wineskins on the table. He points to the 6 massive monuments of human striving in the shadows. Fill the jars with water. Think about the absurdity of this command. The party needs a vintage, and this guest from Nazareth is asking the servants to perform grueling physical labor to refill a ritual washing station. If the master catches them hauling well water instead of finding wine, they will face the consequences. But they obey. They grab the heavy leather buckets. They run to the village well. They drop the ropes into the dark, stone-lined shaft. You can hear the hollow splash at the bottom. They pull up the heavy, dripping skins hand over hand. They carry them back through the crowded streets. They tip the buckets over the limestone rims. The cold liquid sloshes against the carved rock. They do it again, and again, and again. Jesus is not asking for a drink. He is hijacking an entire religious system. He is taking the very objects designed to manage the impossible weight of human guilt, and he is repurposing them for something else entirely. He is standing in front of an exhaustingly incomplete system, 6 jars of endless, repetitive washing, and he is preparing to drown it in a completely new reality. But to see the sheer audacity of what he is about to do to those jars, you have to look at the original Greek text. You have to look at the specific word John uses to describe exactly what they were for. To understand the sheer theological weight of what Jesus is hijacking, you have to look closely at John chapter 2, verse 6. John actually pauses the fast-paced narrative of the wedding crisis to explain the furniture. He writes, "Now there were set there 6 water pots of stone, according to the manner of the purifying of the Jews." The word your English Bible translates as purifying or purification is the Greek noun katharismos. It is a heavy, loaded term. It comes from the root adjective katharos, which literally means clean, clear, or unsoiled. But in the religious vocabulary of the ancient world, it rarely referred to just washing the dust off your skin. It was the technical term for ritual cleansing, and providing for the guests was not just a courtesy, it was a sacred obligation bound by strict, unforgiving codes of honor and shame, for the expiation of guilt, for the desperate attempt to make a contaminated human being acceptable to a holy God. The writer of Hebrews uses this exact same word in Hebrews chapter 1, verse 3. When describing what the Messiah ultimately came to do, the text says, "After he had provided purification for sins, he sat down at the right hand of land, the majesty in heaven." That is katharismos. If seeing the theological architecture beneath these ancient words is stirring up questions you've never considered, you're exactly who this channel is for. Drop a thought in the comments and hit subscribe. Because every week we go deeper into the text than you knew was possible. So the servants stand before the vessels of katharismos. When you hear that Greek word, the 6 massive objects sitting in the shadows of the courtyard suddenly look completely different. You realize that Jesus has intentionally bypassed the ordinary clay pitchers meant for drinking. He has walked straight past the normal vessels of hospitality, and he has locked his eyes on the religious machinery of his day. The 6 stone jars are not just vessels for washing hands. They are monuments to an incomplete salvation. To run out of wine was not a catering failure. It was a social catastrophe. It was a permanent stain on the family name. They represent a system that demands constant, grueling effort. A system that holds 1,000 pounds of water but can never actually wash a conscience clean. It is a system of 6s, constantly falling short of the Sabbath rest of a 7. And Jesus looks at the men holding the leather buckets, and he gives them an instruction that sounds like madness. He does not just tell them to put water into the jars of katharismos. He gives a highly specific, physical command about exactly how much water to pour. And that measurement is the detail that breaks the entire system wide open. "Fill the jars with water," Jesus says. And then John adds a detail that is so small, you can easily read right past it. He writes, "And they filled them to the brim." The servants lift the heavy leather buckets for the final time. The water sloshes over the carved limestone lips. It spills onto the packed dirt floor. It splashes against their bare ankles. The massive vessels are absolutely gorged with water. There is not room for a single drop more. Why does John include this? Why tell us they were full to the brim? Because if there is no room left in the jar, there is no room for human contribution. The brim is not a measurement of volume, an insult to the entire village, and a legal nightmare waiting to happen. In the 1st century, a groom could literally be sued. It is a declaration of completion. The old system of washing. The 6 monuments of human striving. The endless cycle of katharismos. Jesus pushes it to its absolute, physical limit. He fills the law to the brim. He takes the heavy, suffocating demand of ritual purity, and he completes it so thoroughly that no priest, no Pharisee, no terrified dinner guest could possibly add another drop of effort to the vessel. The stone is cold, the water is heavy, the panic is still tight in the servants' chests. And then, the moment shifts. Now draw some out. Jesus says, "And take it to the master of the banquet." Put yourself in the sandals of the servant holding the cup. You know exactly what is in that jar. You just hauled it from the village well. You watch the dust settle on the surface of the water. If you hand the master of the banquet a cup of well water to serve his guests on a day meant for wine, the shame will not just fall on the groom. It will fall on you. The master will spit it out. The party will end in disgrace. But the servant obeys. He dips a smaller earthen serving pitcher into the massive stone opening. He breaks the surface of the liquid. He pulls it up, and as the liquid crests the rim of the stone, the air in the back room changes. The sharp, sterile smell of well water is gone. In the ancient Near East, a wedding feast did not last for an evening. It lasted for 7 days. That single Greek noun changes everything about the water and the wine. The hour Jesus is talking about is not a schedule for a wedding banquet.